Welcome back, everybody, to Battle Hardened Los Angeles. That's right, we're here in the heart of the beautiful city of Pasadena on a Saturday morning. I'm Mitch Leslie, joined by Taylor Morrow. First time casting together, bro?
Yeah.
Great to be here with you.
Yeah, it's been a whole year. I did last year's Battle Hardened, and it was a ton of fun, and I'm really excited to be back in the booth, especially with a legendary person such as yourself, you know?
I mean, look, there's a lot going on today, as you've sort of seen behind us. A churning mass of bodies coming and going. Again, Battle Hardened, it's a pretty intense schedule. So we've got a number of our Swiss rounds, of course, to get through. And then we head over towards top 8. We're playing, of course, for the lion's share of $2,000. PTI, gold foil, of course, for the winner here. It's great to have another large event here, obviously, in Southern California. And a lot of people have made the trip for it, including yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I broke it up into 2 days, you know, but we're here now, and I got to explore beautiful Los Angeles and Pasadena yesterday all by myself.
It's actually really nice out here. I don't know how accurately it captures the zeitgeist of what Los Angeles is, but it's a beautiful spot up here in the valley if you're willing to make the trip. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it wasn't too hot as a top of the state dweller, where it's foggy a lot. You always get worried about, oh gosh, it's gonna be like 105 or something. But it was very pleasant, very walkable. So. I'm excited to get into some flesh and blood now.
Yep. And in light of that, we're in a convention center, of course, here to knock out some of our favorite flesh and blood games here. And of course, our first round, we saw Tyler Horsfall going up against Craig Pollack. That is a quintessential Southern California stoush, and the Scourge of Pasadena lives to tell a tale, of course, in that next round with a pretty solid win. Of course, for those tuning in here, Oldham is definitely still playable. There are many people bringing him around for one last ride, so to speak. Charles Dunn, I've noticed, obviously, on Oldham in that first round. He actually goes up against NorCal juggernaut Shin Inoue in a fantastic matchup. The Oldham takes the win against Dorinthia there. And so we've had a chance to get around the room a little bit and check out some of our players, right? We've got people that made the trip, obviously yourself. We've got Majin Bay coming down from Central California. Pete Bedensic, of course, so 2 players from Team Kayfabe Cards turning up. Both of them on Kano today.
Yeah, there's a number of Kanos here today, actually, as I was walking around and checking everybody out and the matchups. I was surprised, like not just 3, like maybe 8. I think we'll have that breakdown after round 3, but I was surprised at how many there are. And, it's quite the meta. There's a ton of Old Him. There's a ton of Lexi. We'll be seeing those all day for sure. There's a smattering of Viscerize that seem to be doing okay. Yeah, it's a cool meta. There's like 3 Arachnes too, so we'll see how they do. As a assassin player myself, I'm excited to see if there's any added spice there and if they can rise to the top.
And of course, Tao Tao Chu is present
in the house
on Azuri. Yeah, I think, which is something you've been obviously running a fair bit lately yourself.
Yes, yeah, it's amazing hero. It's really fun to play. I play quite a different match or deck than he does, which is fine. You know, he's on a more fatigue contract-based.
I mean, that's what he was doing on Arachne, right? Initially, had this really grindy Arachne list.
Yeah. And he. Okay, cool.
We've got our first match on deck, ladies and gentlemen, so let's not waste too much time and get it started. It's going to be a Kano mirror. Julian Sniffen going up against Majin Bay of Team Kayfabe Cards. Okay, hold on to your hats. I'm not sure if I expected to see 2 Kanos go head-to-head here in this second round, so there'll be a lot to talk about, of course, and there's plenty of nuance. Yeah. Good luck trying to figure out whose turn it is.
Yeah, sometimes I've seen Kano mirrors where they designate a token to pass back and forth so they can keep track of whose turn it is. So don't go get coffee or go to the bathroom because you're going to miss this match. It should be...
explosive?
Yeah, totally. You know, what is the right word there? Do you think Majin Bay feels weird about having Icelander sleeves on his Kano deck? Or is that a psychological thing he's trying to do to his opponent?
You know, I think it's an homage. Majin Bay, big Icelander fan. He actually qualified for his nationals again, sort of recently on Icelander. Obviously, it's a little bit of a different landscape for her at the moment after the bans. Oh, God, the bans actually came in a while back. But, reducing some of Icelander's disruptive potential and obviously moving over to Kano now. And, I had a chat to Caleb before the game. He's sort of saying, well, look, we feel pretty good about bringing Kano right now. you know, it's almost cyclical in the Flesh and Blood metagame that we head into these periods where maybe Kano is not being heavily respected.
Right.
There's less AB on board for a lot of decks. There's a lot more red line decks as well. Like this, you know, Azuri list, while it does often bring an Arcane Lantern into an Arcane matchup, pretty red line a lot of the time, so can suffer. Lexi obviously has Heart of Ice, which can prove quite disruptive, can force the hand of the Kano player on many occasions, but generally, again, not a deck that is sort of heavy on blues. And even these older lists now, we're seeing less AB brought, so Majin Bay saying he's feeling pretty good about that. I think he had an Azuri in round 1 and got a pretty comfortable match win there.
Yeah, it's, and, you know, it's, I wonder how much tech each of them has for the mirror, you know. I feel like when you bring Kano to a tournament, especially a large battle hardened like this, you don't expect to see the mirror match. So we'll see if they...
I mean, you also don't expect to see Tyler Horsball and Craig Pollack paired together in the first round as well. So.
Right, yeah. 2 Titans on 2 Titanous decks, you know. So here we are. They're pile shuffling, a real classic here. Majin Bay going with the straight line technique, whereas Julian did kind of a 2-row technique, you know. And that's what we're here for, me and you, Mr. Uber, is to bring these technical nuances to this match as we're seeing right now.
Look, I think going wide against your opponent before the game starts really sets a precedent in this kind of game. We really want to put them on the back foot, give them a defensive mindset here. And okay, we're going 4 wide though, actually. All right, so we're going a little bit taller, is Julian, so fair enough.
And it's interesting too, Majin Bay has his Ponder token available already, you know, just so we know what state of the game we're in. We're in the Ponder state of the game here.
You know, speaking of Caleb as well, he sort of said, well, you know, since playing RTNs, I would not say that I've been grinding the game. Obviously, for those that are familiar with Caleb or Majin Bay, prolific content creator for card games in general, and obviously a champion in Legends of Runeterra. I can say that because this is a white label event, so that's fine. But yeah, really like a lifetime TCG player, one of many in attendance today here. So I'm curious to see, you know, how Julian sort of handles this matchup. Majin Bay I asked him, what's your matchup spread like at the moment, Majin Bay? He's like, I didn't say Majin Bay, you know, like we'd already introduced ourselves. You know, I didn't have to use his name to address him there, everybody, but...
It would be fine if you did.
I try to avoid the use of nicknames with people I'm acquainted in that regard, but he sort of said, I don't know. I actually don't really know what my matchup spread's like right now. I just really want to play Kano, so... That is also a very prevalent kind of Flesh and Blood player. Ask anybody, you know, who likes to play, I don't know, Dorinthia.
Right.
That would be a great example of someone who's meta-agnostic and wants to play what they play. But
well, so we see right away here from Majin Bay, he is running Waning Moon, where his opponent Julian here is on the Crucible of Aetherweave. So apparently Caleb, or Majin here, has a plan for the mirror.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Obviously, Waning Moon is a card we really often associate with the Icelander, but you know, we've seen a multitude of different wizard weapons picked up for both of those 2 heroes respectively here. I'm curious to see how this plays out, right? I suppose, you know, this definitely has impacts when it comes to the multiplicative nature of trying to, you know, execute like a Blazing Aether combo.
Right.
The Crucible of Aetherweave allowing you to just to go up 1 damage on some of these wizard non-attack actions can be a difference maker here. But Majin Bay might favour just the consistency and being able to, you know, just deliver. He's always probably planning to act on Julian's turn in many cases here, unless he's looking to... Because it's a different matchup, right? Sometimes you'll act on your own turn to try and gain tempo or strip cards from your opponents so when it comes back around, right? Here, that kind of calculus is vastly different.
Well, Waning Moon just puts in so much work, too. You know, it's just an extra attack you get to throw at your opponent, and it's either, you know, more damage or you strip cards. And as we know, when you're playing against Kano, your defenses are the cards in hand. So if you can get more of those out of your opponent, you'll be able to push more damage for sure. So... And plus, with the Alluvian Constellus, as you charge that from defending arcane damage, you'll also get free Waning Moon activation. So kind of like everybody in Flesh and Blood likes to say, a lot of value there.
Definitely, yeah, it's more value for Majin Bay here. And it's being sort of identified in chat that obviously, you know, Crucible for a combo-oriented playstyle can be quite effective here. So
yeah,
we have a Kano activation from Julian.
Also, chat, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate that. We love you all. Amazing.
This is an Aether dart, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, looks like the blue, so it's just going to come in for a little Unski damage. Interesting, maybe Julian's just trying to craft his hand here, but Majin Bey will get to charge his Alluvian Constellus, which will be nice.
Julian is a big Kano fan as well, we're hearing. He hails from a team of entirely Kano players. So if you want to look at someone who's acquainted perhaps with the mirror matchup in testing, Julian is your guy.
Yeah, they call him Blazing Julian, I hear, on the streets.
On the streets. There's a sap here, obviously from Majin Bey. And Gaze the Ages off the top here for Julian. So
Always a card you want to see is Kano. Allows you to opt 2 here, and then it's going to come back to your hand because you've played another non-attack action. So just one of the great things here. Ooh, Lessons in Lava being banished.
Majin Bey sitting behind his Singleton sap, seeing a very hefty pitch zone from Julian and already a lot of action. So here's a Crucible of Aether Weave activation. Lessons in Lava, that is that blue Aether Spindle pitched here. So we're going to be soaking up some of this arcane damage.
Yeah. And I do believe that they both casted those spells at themselves to charge their Constellus.
Okay, checks out. Yeah, I want to encourage everybody to unmoor yourselves from the traditional ideas of turn cycles and just the idea of whose turn it is in general, because that's not particularly relevant here. And most of my and Taylor's conversation is going to be sort of revolving around the overall state of the game, as we will get a little complex here. So Blazing Aether ripped out of the deck.
Yep, so Lessons in Lava dealt 1 damage there, and he gets to put a Blazing on top. Pass the turn, so for those of you keeping track at home, it will now be Majin Bey's turn, so we don't get confused here.
That was just Majin Bey's turn, right? I think he actually went first. Julian is still sitting on the... Okay, both players just drew up to 4, so Julian passing his turn, but it was Majin Bey playing first here. Julian opting not to Arsenal the... Or we'll see. We'll see. That was turn 1 here. So, okay, into the pitch zone.
You were correct.
All right. Thank God. So that's a Prognosticate and a Blazing Aether, I think, into pitch.
Opting to, I guess, leave that card on top here.
And remember, this Blazing Aether was summoned to the top of the deck by Julian, obviously with that Lessons in Lava prior.
Scalding Rain coming down for 2. And it's just a lot of posturing here. You're really trying to get yourself into a good position to deal some damage and also not get the clap back also.
Majin Bey deliberating here on how he intends to respond. It's a Tome of Aetherwind into the pitch zone, which is A being some of this damage.
Yeah, we can see both players trying to keep power cards in the deck.
Yeah, I guess, Julian wasn't, knew that he wouldn't be Kanoing off the top with that Lessons in Lava, so bring that Blazing Aether up and then you can sort of send it back in. Maybe you're trying to... okay, we are...
Excellent. Judge call within the first 5 minutes.
Your deadpan delivery on that really sold it for me, Taylor. Okay, so, Majin Bey's like, I have no attack action cards in my deck, Judge. This can't be right. I think Majin Bey has discovered that there is a face-down card next to the play area. Unless that was the card he was intending to play. So, big shout-out to Tannen Grace in the chat. Always second in my heart, friend.
Is your wife first or your children?
Yeah. They can all occupy that spot. I mean,
well, good answer.
Yeah.
Good answer. Just in case the kids watch it back.
Listen, I already had to do some heavy lifting to get out here, Taylor. I'm not looking to jeopardize my position or my vitality at this stage.
That's smart. Make sure everybody take note of that at home. Those of us with a significant other.
You need to choose your battles for sure.
And today, these two have chosen the Kano battle.
I mean, if they could choose, perhaps we wouldn't be here. So, asking in the chat, what happened? Great question. We haven't heard confirmation on what the hold-up is, but there was a judge call made here, and I'm seeing like a face-down Icelander sleeve sort of next to the play area, so that may have something to do with that. Majin Bay might be like, this card has just materialized in my play area. So
you can see it right there at the bottom of the screen next to Mitch Leslie. And
yeah, that's right. That's where it's sitting here. And Majin was sort of gesticulating it like, I don't know how this got here. What is this, my fourth spinal crush? I don't know how this...
Shout out to last year's Battle Hardened.
Yeah.
Hopefully, so I don't know if you know this, Mitch, is last year the fire alarm went off during one of the rounds of play.
I heard it.
It was
about it.
absolutely terrible. And also, there was a jewel heist that happened here in downtown Pasadena. So hopefully only the excitement happens inside the convention center this time.
All of Southern California is hard to find or went missing in a moment. Absolutely devastating scenes. The fire alarm, because I spoke to a couple of players, and what was so interesting is that, when a fire alarm goes off, it's something you're generally conditioned to react to pretty quickly, right? You sort of know what it means in many cases. But I spoke to a player who said, I scooped instantly, and my opponent looked at me with bemusement and was like, are we not playing a game here? I could say his name, Anthony, and he was like, yeah, well, I mean, there's a fire alarm going off, and we have to evacuate. His opponent was adamant that they would sit there, and that it was in fact just the drill. So,
well,
that caused some issues, I think, with how those matches played out in that round.
Yeah, exactly, and you can't blame anybody for scooping up. Oh, we have from the producer. We hear that it was the kitchen vintage that was being cleaned that set off
vintage. Is that technical term?
Yes, totally. And I have a background of crawling in vents. I don't know, but yeah, if you have thousands of dollars in your flesh and blood deck, of course you're going to scoop it up if it's like a real fire. You can't just leave that in there, So yeah, it was quite a thing.
Right, so we're hearing that. So the situation is that Majin Bay, again, he must have European heritage because he's knocked, talks with his hands. Obviously, he's knocked some of these cards off the top of his deck, and he's instantly sort of called for a stop in play to identify that. Looks like we're back in play now. Cards have been put wherever they're supposed to go, and we're off to the races here. Majin Bay, Illuvian Constellus ate up some of that arcane damage. I think he takes one there, and he pitched the Tome of Aether wins. So. Take a bit of damage, and that's all for Julian. Draw back up to 4. Pass.
We're in it now. That's for sure. So we'll see here if we can, if he's going to use the Constellus to activate Waning Moon, or if he's going to let those counters build up and use them a bit later here. So pitching 2 cards here to play the Surgent Aether Tide, I believe.
Swell Tidings?
Swell Tidings, that's correct. That's correct.
Now, you're not playing a Crucible of Aetherweave here, so the surge text on this card is not as relevant. Obviously, Swell Tidings does 5 arcane damage, but says if it deals more than 5 arcane damage, create a Ponder token. Now, Majin Bay obviously flashed a Ponder token at the start of the game.
Yeah.
There are obviously ways that you can increase the arcane damage dealt by Swell Tidings without using Crucible of Aetherweave, which is why Majin Bay would have that token. But right now, it's just a solid 5 arcane from Julian. It's up to him to figure out how to respond here. Full grip of cards, of course, for Julian.
Yep, and he only has, AB4, it looks like. So we'll leak a damage, and we'll be doing that for the next 40 minutes.
There will be a lot of that. That's right. And I think that it's interesting, right, because these players obviously need to make a decision between, especially when it comes to the use of their blues. Am I pitching to Kano here, and am I trying to make something happen right now on my opponent's turn, or am I going to eat up this arcane damage? So this is a fairly elegant way of doing it. Just send that Oasis Respite in to soak up this 4 damage. You won't be gaining a life, as Julian obviously is still at 30. This is going to chew up most of this.
Yeah, and that is a pretty big cat out of the bag. Now Majin knows that Julian has Oasis Respite in his deck.
Yeah.
So you will have to kind of respect that for the rest of the game.
And again, a reminder, if you've just joined us, Julian is part of an all-Kano team, a real seasoned player in that regard. So this is not going to be a Constellus sort of activation. This will just be pitched here to send in our Waning Moon. This is on Majin Bay's turn, so it's just 2 damage.
Right. And of course, if Julian wanted to respond to that, he would have no cards on his turn and would leave a window for Majin there to punish that. So the posturing, the maneuvering to find the kind of windows you need here is alive and well.
Okay, Tome of Findle from Arsenal. Again, Kano doesn't necessarily stress too much about how he uses that action point on his turn, so he's quite happy to sort of deploy that, gain a little bit of life as well, and that incremental value probably going to have it's going to be quite meaningful in a matchup like this one.
And we see in Julian's hand, I think we have a Wildfire and a Sonic Boom, so
spot on.
Probably some cards we're going to try to pitch to kind of keep in the deck. Could Arsenal the Wildfire too.
I can't tell if that's a Blazing Aether in hand as well. If so, it's a very red-heavy hand. So, Kano activation here.
Might as well take a peek. Another
Sonic
Boom. That's how they come. Using the Sonic Boom to pitch here.
All right, so that Sonic Boom is getting deployed.
Just coming in for 3 here. Now, if any damage is dealt, Julian will be able to banish the top card of the deck and play it at a discount equal to the damage dealt there. But Majin Bey says no way.
It's going to eat that up. That's a little bit scary. That is obviously free value for Julian if he's able to do that. So blue sap pitch to eat that damage up to 3 Constellas counters. Don't worry, everybody home. We are going to be tracking our Illumia Constellas counters very slowly as both these players look to, again, try and leverage those to as much advantage as possible. And again, Julian may be less invested in getting those counters because he's not toting a waning moon here. All right, that'll be Julian's turn there. No Sonic Boom fun over to Majin Bey.
I think I saw a energy potion. Very, very crucial here. Could use the Constellas again here and not lose any cards from hand. But you do kind of want to go through your deck a little bit here as Kano, so we might see some pitched cards. I did see a Nourishing Emptiness, I think, in Julian's hand. So that is rather
That's a spicy one.
Yeah. Kind of a Kano classic here.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that, if he chooses to cast it, how it affects the later turns here with the extra intellect.
All right, so that arcane damage got to be chewed up here. And like you sort of we did see a card pitched, obviously, to deploy that, not a Constellas activation. Majin Bey says that's enough for me. I'm going to pass on back. Talking with Caleb before the game, he says pitch stack is really important in many matchups, especially those slower ones here. But I'm sure against Kano, that's no different. Also, being able to deploy and sort of build a board state. So that energy potion can represent a significant increase in damage when it comes time to unload.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big advantage. Oh, but then we see Julian here play his own energy potion. So
Khajiit has all the wares for these players right now.
It's like they're playing the same hero.
That's right. Julian with the real Marvel Kano though, just pointing that out. Oh, Majin Bey's been on Etsy. No shade. They ain't quite the same. I mean, these guys are almost playing their identical turn cycles back to back. So here it is, Tome of Findle.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good for us, though. It keeps us very hyper-focused because we got to know who's doing it.
No, I definitely, can't afford to glance around the room too much here. There's a lot at play right now. Looks like that was a Kano activation to banish a Tome of Aetherwind off the top.
Yep. We'll see what modes here Majin Bey chooses.
Potion of Deja Vu.
Very good. That's going to be a great combo piece for later here. So let's see if he chooses Dracai, which is the typical maneuver. There is sometimes when you get to do some +1 on the old arcane damage, which is pretty spicy, but rarely chosen.
Yeah, sometimes cards with surge effects, or if you really need to sort of push a Blazing Aether combo a little bit harder, that can obviously be more than just the +1 or +2 if you choose the same mode twice here. So,
exactly. And that extra life gained off of that tome is also, going to be quite relevant as well. Give him a little bit more space to work with here. I think he's got a Kano activation. He's thinking about it. We got a Blazing Aether.
So he opts to banish here.
Quite interesting here.
Now, Julian has not had to pitch to any sort of arcane damage yet, so still a full group of cards for him. So it begs the question, what do we see with this Blazing Aether here? So, okay, we'll just have a Waning Moon activation here. Still not using any of those Constellus counters.
Also, an interesting pitch stack here. So if you can notice, we have 4 blues and then a wildfire and a
Aether Flare?
Aether Flare. That is what that is. Yep. So he's definitely trying to set up the bottom of his deck there for the late game combos, which is good for Caleb. You know, he's pitched a lot of cards. He's got to see a lot of cards now. So that's you know, in some ways he could be ahead there.
Yeah, I mean, it still begs the question. He, you know, took that Blazing off the top and just casts it, I guess, essentially.
0, yeah.
I guess he doesn't want to draw into it there. I'm not sure what the...
I think it's just kind of a brick, and you have to just be okay with, well, now we don't have one of those.
Yeah. Again, it's more likely that you want to try and chip your opponent down here. So the idea of getting a nice big Blazing, potions for days. Okay. A second E-Pot deployed already by Julian. Look, in fairness, you are going through your deck at a pretty high rate here, especially if you're, you know, Kanoing off the top. We have Ophidia drawn up there. Hi, Julian.
Another Tome of Findal, so really going to gain a lot of life here.
Gingerly removing cards from the top of his deck now is Majin Bay. I'll take the life, thank you. Goodness, I'm almost a non-wizard hero at this rate. 38 life. All right, so Aether Quickening, Meritus Scalding there in pitch on top of the Aether Flare.
Emeritus Scalding, one of my favorite cards. I love the artwork. I love its effect. I actually have a print of it in my studio at home.
You know, I liked it until I had to play against Icelander. And I was like, wow, I'm dead. Them Stormstride is pretty good. Obviously, that card takes on a completely different aspect in those decks here.
Yeah, exactly. And it is good that Julian has seen his Eye of Ophidia very early, so now he'll be able to safely put it into his pitch stack, and he'll know exactly where it is, so he won't hit it off.
There's no risk of bricking your whole turn,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
And that's some of the, you know, the Kano debate here when deck building is, do we run Eye of Ophidia or not?
A lot of the discussion is like sideboarding it out, you know, except in specific matchups.
Yep.
Can definitely see why Julian would want to be able to dig a little bit further in this one. All right. That pitch zone heading back here, Majin Bay. Both players with 2 potions. We'll draw up and head over to Julian's turn.
Yeah, we'll see if he put one of those reds there. So then it would be Wildfire, Aether Flare, then a red. So
there it is. Nourishing Emptiness. And you best believe that comes in with the old Dominate.
Eye of Ophidia being pitched there, so we'll get to opt 2 and secretly pitch stack some cards potentially. Which, who knows how much of an advantage that is, you know. I wish I was more of a Kano mirror player, you know.
Shout-outs to Mr. Honigman, Colin, obviously, who's not joining us today. He's overseas, but that's a Kano player for you.
Yep, he's in London right
Must
now.
be nice. So again, the intellect buff here is pretty good. I think like you bring up a decent point, like how important is the pitch stack in this kind of matchup when for much of the game, I think the players are going to be occupying themselves with trying to find efficient ways to chip each other down and pick their spots where they can squeeze in this arcane damage.
Yeah.
You know, when an opponent sort of divested themselves of many of the cards in their hand.
Yeah, exactly. And just, you know, because you get to see every card that's pitched except for off of that eye. So I wonder, you know, how much of an advantage that is as well. And, you know, Nourishing not doing a ton other than drawing you 5 cards. It basically just deleted one of those Tome of Findals.
Exactly, yeah. Starting to chip Majin Bay down. All right. It's an Aether Quickening here.
It is. Very cool artwork on that card, too. And it's the red one, so we might get a little bit extra damage dealt here.
Yeah, obviously coming in for 4 is pretty nice. The surge effect is that it actually can get go again. So talking about width at the start of the game, one of the few ways that Kano has to manufacture that with the use of, you know, action points as opposed to just ripping things off at instant speed. But again, representing 4 arcane damage here. Julian feels priced into eating much of that up.
Yeah, because it's an easy way to get double spelled here on your opponent's turn from Julian's perspective.
It feels good. And Majin Bay would obviously be happy to use 2 action points to
I
deploy some
I think
damage.
he just put his... there he is. Be careful, Majin. Be careful. I think he just put a 3rd Tome of Findal into his arsenal.
Oh, yes. Well, in for a penny, in for the pound, as they say. We'll take some more life. All right, Crucible activation here for Julian. An Aether Flare. Okay.
One of the multiplicative Kano cards, so definitely got to respect it here.
Yeah, so up front, it's 4 damage, and then the next card that Julian plays this turn with an effect that deals arcane damage instead deals that much damage plus X, where X is the amount of damage dealt by Aether Flare. So this is definitely a situation in which you're priced into trying to limit the damage done by this card as much as possible. Kano off the top. Oh, and that is Value City.
It really is. I mean, that really puts you super far ahead. That's, you know, basically 6 resources you could do with whatever you want. Defense, offense.
It's like the meta. Like if you are trying to go for a huge game-winning combo, like being able to feed those resources into Metacarpus node, maybe extra Kano flips is very powerful. Both these players about to open their own bloody apothecary at this rate. Majin Bay with another energy potion. So.
Yep. Activating his Alluvian here and getting to Waning Moon for 2. So yeah, the energy potion battle is perhaps boring at first, but is extremely important.
It's all about framing. I'm sure we can frame this in a way that makes it a bit more compelling.
Well, they have to play around it now for the rest of the game. Like, Majin has to know that he has access to 6 resources that aren't in his hand at all times, and the same thing for Julian, that Majin has 4 extra resources on board, So your combo or how you sequence your turn is going to have to really revolve around playing around those extra resources.
Yep.
And, of course, the offensive potential that provides as well.
We headed back over to Julian here, unless Majin Bay is past priority, and Julian may opt to act. But with Majin Bay at 4, I think he's already drawn up. So, yeah, Julian's turn. for those who are experiencing similar difficulties keeping up at home, it's a Tome of Findal from Arsenal.
Mm-hmm. Pitching another Tome of Aether Wind, so he's making sure he keeps those in deck for sure.
Will there be a response here? This will send Julian naturally above his starting life total as well. So both of our Kanos looking hale and hearty a good 25 minutes into the round.
Both above their starting health. Which is hilarious.
Again, it's all about framing, everybody.
Yeah. It definitely is here.
All right.
Reverberate.
Reverberate, okay.
Coming down here.
Julian, interested in playing that?
So it looks to me that Julian's strategy seems to be sending a lot of his blues out of the deck and kind of thinning it down. And now with his pitch stack going, looking to eventually, as the kids say, go off.
Go off, yep. Are the kids still saying that? I thought they're saying, like, for real now, and, get.
They say bet.
Bet, yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I'm keeping up. Don't worry.
Well, you better as a father. you gotta be cool.
Oh goodness. That ship has long since sailed.
Well, I think you're cool.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Hey, guess what? Tome of Findal played again.
All right. So I think we're about as well read as we could possibly be. Obviously, still plenty of books in these wizard bags here, but again, I mean, Majin Bay, that's a lot of life. That is pretty absurd here.
I mean, you don't know really, how much schooling there is to become a wizard. Anybody who's watched a Harry Potter, they take a lot of classes.
I mean, if this is anything to go by, the average literacy level in Volcor had best be, world best at this stage. And all that reading, and they still opted not to come to the aid of Solana, because they're reclusive, hermits. Shame on you, Craven. They
Shout
need you
out
right now.
To Yuki Lee Bender, personal friend of mine in the chat, and excellent Flesh and Blood player, Canadian. We have a number of Canadians actually here today. which is incredible.
I mean, the Canadian scene is frankly terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. You will not find a top 8 without at least one of them representing there. I would love to get a California versus, I don't know, let's narrow it down, Toronto area matchup. There's a lot of smack talk between the regions. But, you will never see me being excited getting into the seat across from, I don't know, Isaac Krupp, Sean Dallowal, or any of these incredible Canadian players. I prefer not to. I'll sit here, though, and talk about it. That's fine.
The chat seems to believe, and I apparently missed this, that he pitched Tome for 3 resources.
Dan Majin read all those books, and still, you may be right, everybody. We may get an idea of it. The uprising's over. You're fine. You've totally stabilized your nation. You're in a great position to help out, Solana. Just a hop, skip, and jump away. Just send a couple contingents of troops and beat back the monastery. All right, here's an Aether Spindle. This is a pretty hefty one coming in here, obviously at red, meaning that Julian will have the chance to opt based on how much damage this does. So coming in for 5 is no small number.
Yep, and allowing you to look at the top cards of your deck based on the damage dealt here.
Of course, Dracai his ears perk up if I talk about Toronto versus anybody.
Now, I think that's a altered Eye of Ophidia. I do not.
Yeah,
think,
it's a proxy. Yes,
I don't think that's a Blackwing Studios joint.
No,
obviously.
Yeah, it's not. You know, it ought to be. I think.
Yeah, maybe Majin Bey's niece or nephew did that one.
We had the pleasure of hosting Mara at the Goliath Gauntlet not so long ago, and she had her work on full display. It was a pleasure. Good to see you in the chat as well, Mara. And yes, hi Noah. Yes.
Yeah, she has done. She did some Icelander art altars for me.
Awesome.
Turned out excellent.
All right. So the Aether Spindle came in. Majin Bey eating up most of that by the looks of things. Still at a healthy 38 damage. And yes, well, I mean, why not at this point? Both players with all of their copies of Energy Potion on the board. Majin Bey, obviously, though, in terms of his victuals, he's one ahead with that Potion of Deja Vu here. But yeah, both players well and truly set up. The real question is, what are you going to make use of? How are you going to make use of all these extra resources? We're here to see the fireworks.
Yes, we are. Okay. Julian opting to take a little bit of damage, finally, keeping all of his cards.
Yeah, I spoke to Pete Bedensik. He also is proxying in Ivor Fiddy. I can mention he probably plays Ivor Fiddy as a Kano player. The Vegas Heat warped the card, he says. So he can't. It's for all intents and purposes, it's marked. So he has to sort of proxy it. My condolences to those who live in such an inhospitable place, but I don't feel that bad for you as I hail from Australia. So been there, done that. Another Aether Spindle.
1 damage getting through there.
You can have a little peek.
Majin Bey pitching his own Aether Spindle.
It has, yeah, the concept of a draw definitely been invoked in the chat. It's not out of the question, I would say, as we've had these players that are leisurely paced through much of the game with a whole lot of damage done. But hey, that's an Aether Wildfire. Perhaps we get some action here.
Well, it's played on Majin's turn, so it's just vanilla 4 damage.
Okay, fair enough.
Yep. Which could leak a damage if Julian is unwilling to pitch 2 cards, which it looks like that is the case. Chip, chip, chip.
And the Waning Moon as well to follow it up.
Isn't that a Chumbawamba song? No, it's a drip, drip, drip.
I can't take your word for it. I know Tub Thumping.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's a hit. That's what we've devolved into is 90s weird pop
First game, Chumbawamba reference. Hope that was on your bingo card, everybody. No chance for draw, says Dracai. Sorry, well, look forward to that. Obviously, Aether Wildfire doesn't impact your weapon, so Majin Bey's not getting any potential boost there. We are digging. Another Aether Spindle here. 4 coming cross, pitch, pitch, pitch. Now, our Luvian Cancellus is, it's basically 3 beavers in a trench coat now. You're not going to fit any more on that one.
Yeah, that's an interesting fact about beavers. They love trench coats.
Yeah, especially the ones that have a finish akin to wood. Maybe they can cart that one off and find a way to make use of it in their dam building expeditions. This begins to feel sleepy. Now, goodness, how could anybody feel remotely sleepy hearing us reference 90s hits in a Kano mirror?
So, Lessons in Lava coming down. Got to respect it. But with only one card in hand, perhaps you just eat the 3 damage. What is he going to put on top that he's going to draw? A blue? Who knows? It would ruin the pitch stack if he were to search for it.
Oh, goodness, not the pitch stack. Think of
I mean, you've spent, 20 minutes, 30 minutes right now crafting it, so we don't want to mess it up.
All right.
That would be some high-level stuff, though, if you were like, take 3. you gonna shuffle? Or?
Exactly. That obviously is a concern. Shuffling away the foundations that these players have sort of laid. All right, we'll wait and see what Julian obviously having a look through the graveyard here just to assess probably the threat density remaining in this deck.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll follow it up with a waning moon here. So
just putting in a ton of work, like we stated at the beginning of this match, is waning moon is really just a workhorse here.
Yeah, the greatest point of difference between these two players, and we sort of discussed it a little bit at the start of the game, and what it represents in terms of like an ideal game plan. And Majin Bay is slowly but surely chipping away. Like, let's bear in mind, Julian has played at least 2 Toma Final this game, maybe 3, a number of them at least. So there's been a significant life gain there. So despite that, he is, would you believe it, below his starting life total. So Majin Bay chipping in constantly. Here is a buffed Aether Flare.
Coming in for 4, so you do have to respect that. Could be a 2-card block here, but nope, Majin electing to take 1 damage. He's got the health lead to spare.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be overly perturbed by that. This was obviously deployed on Julian's own turn, if I'm not mistaken. See, teammate of Majin Bay, Pete Budenzik, turning up and having a look at the matchup. Looks like his game was much quicker. Probably wasn't a Kano mirror, in fairness. All right, we are pitching to Kano. Prognosticate off the top, and we'll be casting it.
Very interesting. I think most of the time mirror matches in Flesh and Blood can be on the snoozy side, but are definitely very technical and very interesting when you get into the nitty-gritty of what the players are doing, because these players now are going to be playing for nearly the entire time and have been setting up and in the game to try to counter each other's in the game, and they're going back and forth with their pitch stack and trying to chip each other, and it all comes down to, basically the last 10 to 5 minutes of the match.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try and take one of these players aside later and get some insight into what the game plan looks like now for Kanos in this sort of mirror match here. So.
Yeah, and earlier we saw Julian use an Oasis Respite, and perhaps I thought maybe more of those would be coming out.
Right, just the one so far.
Yeah, totally. I haven't seen one pitched or another one used, so that might have just been a cheeky one of.
All right, so obviously that gaze, after being cast off the top, gets to come back to the hand and be used as pitch fodder. This will send the waning moon again crackling across the table. Julian again is faced with that same question. And I feel like it's always been used on Majin base turns. So we've not really seen that sort of other side of the waning moon coin where it can present 3 damage on an opponent's turn. It's just been a little bit dangerous, I think, to sort of part with your cards when you won't be drawing up in that end phase.
Yeah, exactly, because that's the only way you have to defend yourself.
Yeah, Fabric in chat. There are many layers of thought on display. I don't know how many substrata I'm able to really delve into with all of you here, but we're getting the brass tacks of the situation here. We can obviously glean a lot in terms of sort of overall strategy from what we've seen from these players so far. Yeah. Majin Bay asking about time in the round, I think.
Yeah, Majin, there's 13 minutes, 55 seconds left, if you can hear me. Which I don't think he can, so, which is probably better. Substrata. That was a great word, by the way.
Thank
great,
you.
great
Yeah.
usage. Yeah, that's why you're a consummate professional.
Monty's in the chat points out that Aether Wildfire actually buffs your opponent's arcane cards.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's something to be really mindful of.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't really use that. I can't believe we didn't talk about that
Yep.
at the beginning.
Because it's all action card effects that deal arcane damage on that particular turn get buffed by a certain amount. So you have to be extremely judicious about how you deploy that. And that, I would suggest that really warps the way that this matchup plays as opposed to, you know, any non-mirror for the Kano player.
Yeah, exactly. You do not have access to kind of your, for lack of a better term, wombo combo.
Yeah. He's just as likely to blow up in your face at that point.
I also love this about chat when they talk about how good the players are and their memories and stuff, where Ryan here says 90% certain Julian knows every card in order of his pitch stack.
Oh, that's pretty obscene.
Yeah.
Yeah, very impressive. I know, like, you know, the concept of pitch stacking is something that doesn't always get sort of broached much. We see actually on, like, podcasters often use the opportunity to dedicate a whole episode to talking about it.
Yep.
And there are completely different kinds of pitch stacking, right? Sometimes you pitch stack in clumps. So you try and make sure that you're pitching, I don't know, like if you're playing a Guardian, you try and pitch blues with, you know, a red attack action to make sure that you can actually get value out of that. You know, we saw that before, I think, Majin Bay pitching a large number of blues with like a wildfire, for example, to make sure that he'd be able to draw that up. And if push came to shove, he'd be able to go off and have enough resources to make an explosive combo happen. To memorize every card in your pitch stack is a different story. And there's a couple of players I know that are capable of doing so. That's horrifying to play against.
Oh, there is another Oasis Respite there. So
Okay.
we just mentioned that earlier.
With upside, too.
Yeah, exactly. Getting the full value there, but blocking a bit more than it needs to, but that's okay. Sometimes when you're tracking your own pitch stack, you do it in, like, you go blue, blue, red, blue, blue, red. Not maybe specific cards, but you know the composition of the hands that you're going to be drawing into.
Yep.
And the likelihood of what the next X number of cards are.
And there are some decks that just don't do it at all. Either the game doesn't go long enough or you're shuffling frequently. Like as a Dorinthia player, I've not had to worry about it pitch stacking too much. We do think about it, but more in terms of threat density in the deck remaining, especially in a matchup that's quite defensive. It's going to maybe force us into a scenario where we risk fatiguing. You think much more about that. But obviously when you shuffle, where a number of your cards allow you to tutor and shuffle, that sort of goes out the window. So that's what the beauty of this game, why we have a Tome of Aether Wind and Kano activation here from Julian, is that you really have to play very differently based on your style. So Sap off the top, that's an easy windmill slam. Poke that one across the table. Margin Base says, no, my Blazing Aether is going to account for that arcane damage. All right, Potion of Deja Vu. That one for free. Join the stack.
Yeah, building the bar. And let's, you know, what's interesting too is now we're down to 10 minutes, you know, and so have they been moving at a pace that is, use of Deja Vu Potion here to put these cards on top from his pitch zone.
What do you think he is hoping for with this?
I'm not sure. I didn't get a good look. Maybe just keep those cards in deck. Maybe he does know.
Just wants them back.
What the next couple of cards are here. I forget what I was saying earlier. I got distracted.
Talking about pitch stacking between different play styles, perhaps, or we've moved on by then. I'm not sure.
Well, regardless, it'll come. It might come back to me. Who knows?
All right. Another swell tidings here from IGB. We have a Kano activation in response here.
And he did put these cards on top for a reason. So if he does know his pitch stack basically exactly, then he would have wanted, because he pitched a lot of blues, he would want those resources.
Oh, Ragamuffins here. Okay. So this generally heralds an attempt to combo. Okay, so it looks like the Gazy Ages come back off the top again. Julian going to be working with a large amount of resources here. Obviously, after he gets to opt, he might be deciding still the sequencing of that, though.
Right. He had 2 Kano activations, so those are the 2 right there that he's allowed to happen.
All right. Tome of Aether Wind, draw. What did I say? There's a Wildfire and Sonic Boom drawn off that.
Not really what you wanted to see there.
Obviously, Gaze will let him look further and give him access to another blue pitch card. We have, obviously, all of these energy potions, so Wildfire off the top here.
Which is risky. But Majin only has two cards in hand, so a little overextended here himself.
This is the first time that we've really seen Julian do even so much as a Kano activation in response to something from his opponent. So finally, Julian opting to play on Majin Bay's turn here.
Yeah, exactly.
But do you have what you need? I mean, there's a Blazing and a Wildfire there, right? So the core part of your combo, and your opponent is lacking cards here. You get an Opt 2.
And you have to expect that Majin will block some of this, so this isn't going to be a 40 damage combo here, but it could be a healthy chunk of damage.
Let's count along together in the chat, everybody. Gaze resolves? Question mark? Looks like Majin Bay wants to think here. I mean, are you incentivized at all as Majin Bay to, okay, we are actually going to start to, are we pitching the Kano ability here in response? Popping this energy potion by the looks of things. Now it gets complicated.
Yeah, we'll have to see here what he's planning on doing with this energy potion. If it's going to be purely defensive, or if he is trying to get an extra spell out there for the Wildfire combo.
All right. So we have 3 floating for Majin Bay, but he's allowing the Gaze the Ages now to resolve.
Opting 2 here. Interesting, he's putting both to the bottom. Not what he wanted to see.
If he knows his pitch stack, there can only be one reason that Julian is doing this right now, and that is to win the game on the spot. With 6 minutes 30 left in the round.
And this is why we have been watching this match, is for this exact moment.
All right. So this is before the Swell Tidings has resolved. Julian is holding priority after resolving that Gaze the Ages. What have we got in hand here? Obviously, the Gaze comes back to hand. There's a Sonic Boom here as well.
And I think it's another red in hand, which is a little unfortunate, but we do still have access to Storm Striders, but those are a huge tool that you can't give away willy-nilly. I wonder what is also in Julian's arsenal.
Yeah, because he has a Wildfire in hand, right? Obviously, Ragamuffins had often is used to get one of those cards on top of your deck so you can play them at instant speed. Okay.
Gaze. And it looks like Julian
Wildfire?
did take the Swell Tidings.
Yep, he ate that. Still looking to play, though. Obviously, maybe bearer thought. I don't know how important this pitch stack for Julian is right now. I think he's gotten to the meat and potatoes of it, so to speak.
And he has to let the Swell Tidings resolve first before he does the Wildfire, or else
otherwise he takes the extra damage from it. Yeah, okay.
Yep, exactly.
All right, here it is. Aether Wildfire comes in, and that is a Metacarpus node activation. We are looking to go.
I'm unsure if did he pay for it also, or is he just, because it's it triggers when you play a spell, if he's just representing that it could be.
I don't think he's paid for it yet. None of those E-Pots have been used, unless did he just pitch that Sonic Boom? So, but that would be probably to play the Aether Wildfire here.
Yeah,
so.
Yep, so we're thinking, so no Metacarpus trigger there, so just coming in for, I think he used the Constellus also, so it is for 5.
It is for 5, yeah. Okay, he's easy to get now.
Yep.
Majin Bay's like, yeah, look, don't worry about it. I know what you're doing. It's okay. You show me if you've got it, you got it.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, I guess before that resolves, you can Crucible at instant speed, right? And it resolve Crucible first and then the Wildfire?
Well, I believe he did it a little bit earlier in the turn and just cleaned it up.
Okay, so we're now representing it now.
Yeah.
Also, we don't have mics to the table. I don't know if we'd be able to understand what apocryphal dialect these two players are conferring in, as only Kano players seem to know. They are they're an odd bunch.
Looks like Majin has a Tome of Aetherwind and a Gaze the Ages in hand, so not the most resource-heavy or offensive hand here.
I remember that 3 floating. Aha! Of course, because he's popped the E-Pop. Big shout-out to Sam, of course. You'll see him later. So I saw him earlier as well.
He's going to block 4 here, take 1.
Okay. So that's the first Wildfire. Something tells me there's more where that came from, though. Remember, there's 2 Kano activations worth of energy potions available to Julian, plus this Gazy Ages that we knew was in his hand.
Ooh, here comes Storm
It's their second Aether, right?
Yeah, it's got to be.
Oh, okay, here it is. Aether Wildfire, number 2. Metacarpus node trigger as well on a stack, so this Aether Wildfire is straight up coming for 5, I guess.
And it's going to be coming in 6 here after he pays for nodes. This is a scary spot to be in, which looks like
Do we not need... I mean...
He did pay for it.
Do we not need something else here, though, from Julian? A little bit more.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, Majin does have the ability here to block 4 of this 6.
These are the arcane damage spells you want to be eating up.
So he elects to take 6 there.
It would not be. It would be. Let me do the math here for you all.
So it's 7 wildfire damage.
Yep.
So
total.
Whatever the next spell he plays.
It depends how much of this gets eaten up. That will determine the blazing Aether.
Well, Majin did take that 6 off of the second one.
Okay, he has.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he's taken 7 total.
Right.
So the next spell will get +7
yep.
from wildfire for either player. Will get +7.
That's true. Wait, another Gazy Ages, and it's a Kano activation off the top.
Oh, triple wildfire! Oh.
Okay, both the pots popped. The 3rd wildfire.
So that's going to come in for 11.
Disgusting.
Metacarpus trigger. That would be 12 if he pays for it. Incredible. The triple wildfire.
All right, so looks like Metacarpus node being activated here. We don't have enough dice in the world to account for this amount of damage. Julian is unloading. Can't along and home, everybody.
Here we are doing math in the most exciting part of...
I'm going to pitch this red right now. Just eat up as much of this as I can.
Deja Vu potion here. Putting cards back on top, Kanoing. And then getting 2 blues. That's a really heads-up play there by Majin.
Wait a minute. We might best obviously identify in the chat that, yeah, if Majin has a blazing Aether in hand...
That would be insanity.
It'll be curtains. He's gone for it. He's starting to eat through these potions now. Gotcha.
Okay, cool. So there is a time extension. So we do see the clock going down, but there was a judge call earlier. So we have from that and from having to get set up on camera here. So let's see here. So Julian opts to play his blazing Aether now in response to the E-pot being activated by Majin.
So suffice to say, this is sufficient damage to kill Majin Bay if he eats all of it here. Yeah, he got it.
Yep.
We don't necessarily need to work out the
Yep.
finer details
Totally.
of that. Wow, what a moment there. Obviously, Julian Sniffen on your screen with a triple wildfire combo to blow Majin out of the water. Obviously, very close to his starting health total. There's a lot of volatility in this matchup. Obviously, you really have to play around the fact that, like we discussed, wildfire affects both players here, but I think Majin Bay realizing that he was out of luck. He obviously deja vu's, his stack back on top of his deck. He's starting to work through some of those energy potions, but my goodness, that was the explosive end to that matchup that we were hoping for. It's a lot to keep track of, but yeah, I'm kind of blown away by that. That is a pretty incredible moment. And while we got a moment to talk about it, just quietly, of course, we're partnering up with Savage Lands News with our bounties today. They're giving out 3 Alpha 8 playmats, of course, to the 3 most epic moments of the stream. You best believe that will be one of them. No doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Disgusting.
I mean, just so cool to just work through the whole game. And
did Majin Bay win that? Did he have
I don't think so, because he had no spell, and he extended the fist first.
I don't. Unless he had Blade.
Can we get a confirmation on that there, God?
Yeah, we might need to run that back, because I think Julian played out his blazing Aether, and then there's a extend of the hand. And Majin Bay is the one that's giving us a thumbs up here. So appreciate that in the chat. Very, very complicated end phase there. And I think the problem is that that third Wildfire may not have resolved yet when he played that Blazing Aether.
Oh, gotcha.
And that would have that would have been insufficient damage to win the game. So if he punts, and obviously really hard to discern this without conversation from the table, but I think that Majin Bay is also able to just use that extra pump damage from the Wildfires. Oh my God!
Right, Majin Bay did win. Won the game. That's incredible. Which is kind of what we started to say, that he that the Wildfire is a risky play. So all you need is one spell.
I mean, serving us up that match for round 2 is absolutely absurd. Obviously, Aether Wildfire, as we pointed out, Aether Wildfire is pumping both players' spells on that turn. Something we talked about a whole bunch throughout the course of this game. But when they resolve, Majin Bay allows these to resolve. He's got enough health, right?
Yeah.
That, these can resolve and he can sort of stay alive, and then they can buff his spells. So he can just turn around like, my opponent has no cards in their hand. I can just, deploy an arcane damage spell. And I'm not actually sure what one he played there, because I think the table may as well have flipped at that point. But yeah, he had a spell like 3 Blazing Aethers, which is going to pump Majin Bay spells as well. So we got there in the end, chat. Obviously, a very complex end game state to navigate. And just pretty absurd. I mean, we probably should have expected this coming into a Kano matchup.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing when you're playing the Kano mirror, is that if you're going off, your opponent, always your opponent has a chance to respond there. So that's it's getting dicey.
So I want to make it clear, obviously, if you're coming to the stream for maybe the first time, or you're not super acquainted with Flesh and Blood, what you've basically witnessed is like a battle of astrophysicists sort of battling with wits. It's very complicated because of the multiplicative nature of Aether Wildfire here. So obviously credit to those in the chat who are able to follow along with that. We've tried our best to sort of guide you through that. Let's talk a little bit about the metagame breakdown that we've got here, of course, of the Battle Hardened. 148 players, by the way. Full house out here. And here's our breakdown. So Azuri really highly represented here, right? Obviously 12, this or that. No surprise to see Lexi really dominating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really powerful deck. This is kind of what we expected. I'm a little surprised to see 10 Bravos and only 8 Dromai when we have such a high representation of Lexi, but obviously you don't really want to play Dromai into old him too much, so that's there too.
I would also say Southern California is a bastion for Guardian players.
Yeah, that's
true.
true.
God, they love Guardian out here. Not just Oldham. We actually seen like Oldham underrepresented. I would say a lot of these Oldhams might be traveling players, coming in with these lists here. But yeah, Bravo's really popular here. There you have it. I don't know how we're going to follow up a performance like that. A Kano mirror that goes to the wire, Majin Bay comes out on top. Very complex matchup. It's going to be a great one to pour over in the VOD, especially if you mute my voice going through it. We're going to be back, of course, round number 3 here at Battle Hardened Los Angeles is coming right up, so don't go too far, everybody. It's only uphill from here.